Hi, friends. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for all your love and support. Thank you for the likes and the shares, and especially for your inspirational and your kind comments. I really appreciate it. I didn't realize that, but I hoped that when I started this podcast, it would resonate with some people. And for some of you, it wasn't so much a personal journey that you're on, but it's something that you know someone else is experiencing, and you felt the need to connect with them, which is awesome. That's what this podcast is about. To number one, let people realize that grief sucks. It's real and it's horrendous, but we have to go through it. Number two, that you're not alone. There are other people out here who are experiencing the same things that you're experiencing. You're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have to go through your process the best way that you can, and allow the people that are trying to love you the best way that they can to love you. So, this episode, I just wanted to take the time out to say thank you so much. This is Marcia, and today I'll be sharing with you my story of Noah. This past January, I lost Noah. He died of cancer, and he fought as long and as hard as he possibly could. And I'm so incredibly proud of him for how well he did throughout the whole process. Unfortunately, he succumbed to cancer on January 4th, 2024. But I'm going to share with you our life together until that point. At the end of my first marriage, a friend of ours, he was a friend of mine, exclusive of Noah. He was a friend of Noah's, exclusive of me, and he was a friend of my ex-husband, exclusive of the both of us. And so when we knew that the marriage was coming to an end, I said to Alan, hook a sister up, hook a sister up. And he said, no, 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 I can't hook anybody up. He says, the only friends I have are Mikey and Noah. And you already been with Mikey, and you're too crazy for Noah. So I'm not doing that. And I said, come on, Alan, hook a sister up. Well, Alan kept up with me throughout the separation period, just making sure I was okay, just keeping up and making sure my spirits were up and that I wasn't depressed and things like that. So occasionally he would tell me that he and Noah went to the movies to see a horror movie, and I'd be like, I would have went. Why didn't you say something? I would have went. And he'd say, nah, I'm not doing that to Noah. And then he would say, we went to a jazz concert, and I said, why didn't you let me know? I would have went. And I didn't like jazz, and he was like, nah, I'm not doing that to Noah. So over the 2 years, these are the conversations that he and I were having about he and Noah's escapades and how I wanted him to introduce me to Noah. So 2 years into the separation, and we're getting ready to file for divorce and whatnot, Alan called me up one day and said, here, write down this number. So I acted like I wrote it down, but I didn't. And he said, Noah said to call him. And I said, oh, okay. But I didn't call him. That's not who I was, and I wasn't going to give him a call. So a week or so went by, and it was a weekend that I had both of the boys, and they were in the bedroom trying to kill each other. And they're fighting. They're 6 years apart, but my goodness, they acted like they were twins or something. They were always at each other. And so I'm in there yelling and screaming at them, telling them they better cut it out. They better stop hitting each other. They better stop fighting. And the phone rings, and I see on the caller ID that it's Noah. And I pick up the phone and I say, hi, Noah. Like there's nothing going on in the house. And he says, hey, I hear you're moving to my neighborhood. You should give me a call when you move, and maybe we can get together and go to dinner or something. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds nice. Okay, sure. I wasn't going to call him. And so 2 or so days go by, and he calls me back and he says, you know what? We don't have to wait until you move. We can go out now. And I said, okay. So we made a date and we went to the movies to see Waiting to Exhale, which at that period of time, everyone that took me out on a date had to go see this movie, poor guys. And so we saw the movie, and then we went on another date and we went to dinner, and we, talked to get to know each other and everything. And I gave him my little speech of um, how how I feel a relationship should be. And I feel like if you know each other for at least 6 months, then you'll start letting your guard down and you'll start doing stuff that the other person will be able to figure out, oh, I can deal with this. This is fine. Like putting the toilet seat down, or squeezing the toothpaste from the middle, or leaving dishes in the sink, whatever it is. After 6 months, you start letting your guard down, and things start slipping through the cracks. And sometimes you say, "Oh, I can't put up with that," and sometimes you say, "Yeah, I can put up with that. That'll be fine. That's fine." Well, I shared all this with Noah, and he agreed to a certain extent, and so we continued to date. Then we got our kids together, and we took them to the movies to see Anaconda with Jennifer Lopez, and then we on another date we took them out to dinner at a local pizzeria, and then on another date we took them horseback riding. So the kids were getting to know each other, and they were getting along a lot, a lot. um, and so we were Noah and I were around each other, and we were getting along and whatnot. But one thing I failed to mention when I was talking about us having the conversation of how I felt relationships should progress is I had said that at the end of 6 months, if you still had any questions or any concerns, or you felt it wasn't what you wanted, that was fine. Just say so, and we'll just end the relationship, friendship, whatever it was. And he seemed to agree with that. So we're getting together, we're having dates, and we're um, bringing the kids together, and bringing them to different activities and whatnot. So one evening, Noah and I were at his apartment, and we were watching a movie out of Africa. And I'm paraphrasing this right now, but because I don't remember exactly what was said, but it's something similar to this. This white man asked this African man, um, "What is your name?" And the African man said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, "Charlie." And so the white man says, "Charlie, that's an awfully weird name for somebody from, where are you from?" And he said, "Zimbabwe." I'm paraphrasing. And the white man says, "That's a really weird name for somebody from Zimbabwe." So Charlie says, "Have you ever been to Zimbabwe?" And the guy says, "No." And so Charlie says, "Well, how do you know what kind of names they have in Zimbabwe?" So I said, "Noah, that's an awfully weird name for somebody from, where are you from?" He said, "Casablanca." I said, "Get out of here." So he walked out of the room. He was gone a few seconds. He came back with a piece of paper. It was his birth certificate. And there it said that he was born in Casablanca, Morocco. And I said, "Oh my God, oh my God, you are a real true African American," because he was born in Africa and raised in America. Well, I'm looking at uh, the birth certificate, and it says his birth date. And I said, "Get out of here." And he said, "What?" I said, this is your birthday?" And he says, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Because my birthday is the next day." And that's how I found out where he was born and what his birth date was. And it was the craziest thing ever. So shortly after this, he set up a date for us at this really nice restaurant. And we went and we were talking, and he just seemed kind of nervous and whatnot. And but I was just like, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking anything big. And so he was saying to me, and it must have been around the 6 month mark, and he was saying to me that he really liked me, he could see this relationship moving forward, and our kids liked each other and everything. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah, that sounds like pretty much what it is and everything. So that's pretty much the gist of that dinner. He was just stating some facts of how he felt about things. And then shortly after that, we were at his house, his apartment again, and he had cooked a dinner and he sat down to eat, and he was sharing some very, very intimate things with me. And I mean, he let his guard down, and which I appreciate because a lot of people don't do that. And he was very honest about some things. And then he said that he asked me how I felt about the things that he shared with me, and I told him my thoughts on it. And then he says, "Okay, so we've passed the 6 month mark, and you said you didn't want to go past 6 months unless we were going to go towards a future together." He says, "So let's do this." So I said, "Let's do this," and he said, "Yeah, let's get married." That was my beautiful romantic proposal, and I just said, "Okay." So we decided that since our birthdays were together, we would get married around that time so that we would always remember the anniversary date, which, truth be told, even right now, I can't tell you exactly which day it is. I've never been able to remember it. But he has, he always has. And so whenever people would ask us, I would just look at him and he'd start laughing and he'd say the date and whatnot. But so we started planning for our wedding, and we let me see, we started planning for our wedding, and then we got married. Some things happened, excuse me, between getting engaged and planning the wedding, and it was like a lot of, I mean, it happens, there was a lot of stress, and we ended up moving in together, and there was getting used to being with each other in a closed setting, and it was very stressful. And truth be told, at one point he had left for a couple of days. He had went home to his mom's for a couple of days, and it was just what it was. So when he came back, we promised to work on it. And okay, to fast forward, there were some episodes. I mean, they were just like just things that he either had issues with, that from time to time he couldn't get past, and there were things that I had issues on it from time to time I couldn't get past. So all in all, no, and I separated several times throughout our relationship. One time I had went to work, and honestly, I had no idea that something so drastic was wrong. And I went to work, and halfway throughout the day, Alan called me and said, "I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I'm not going to be knowing, I'm not going to have this information and not share it with you. I helped Noah move this morning." He cleaned out the house. It was just so bizarre. He took all of his stuff and some of mine, and he moved to another town. He and his son, and it just blew my mind. And I said, "Okay." And one thing about me is, if it's not working for you, I have no problem letting you go, because why stay something in somewhere in a relationship that you're miserable in, or that you're unhappy in, or that you can't see down the road with. So anyway, so he had left, and he was gone for like 10 months. And so we had no contact with each other. I didn't call him, he didn't call me, or nothing. And one day, out of the clear blue sky at work, I got an email from him. And I said, he said, "Can we talk?" And I said, "About what?" And he said, "We need to talk." And I said, "Nah, I don't think there's any reason to talk. You clearly displayed how you felt by moving out and not saying anything to me and not talking to me for 10 months. So there's no reason for us to talk. And he said, can we please talk? So I gave in and we went and had dinner and we talked. And he explained to me what his motives were and how much he realized he loved me and wanted to be with me and wanted us to be a family. And he would do whatever it took for us to get back together and whatnot and stuff. And I played along and I said, yeah, okay, whatever. And we got back together and we lived, we had high points. Noah and I traveled. Uh, we've traveled, I don't know, we've traveled all over the country. We've gone to Boston, to Florida, to Georgia, to North Carolina, to Virginia, to Washington, to Texas, to California, to Las Vegas. Um, we've gone many places, all over the country. And then we've gone on a cruise. We've gone on to the Bahamas. We've gone to Bermuda. We've gone to Hawaii. We've had some really, 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 really high points. Oh, and we just 2 years ago went to Aruba. Really high points. We, you know, had some really, really, really great times. And we've had some seriously low points. I mean, he's left a couple of times, I've left a couple of times, and it just came to a head at about 2017. And I said to him, you know what, Noah? I can't do this anymore. I do not want to live my life like this anymore. I said, if you love me, you've got to find something that you like about me. Everything can't be so much of a disappointment. Um, I can't deal with this anymore. So if you want, I'll leave. But if I leave, you got to promise never to come back for me. You got to promise never to come get me. You can't come for me. You've got to let me stay gone. And he left the kitchen and he was gone for a few minutes. And then he came and I leaned against the counter. Don't ask me why, but I leaned against the counter and I said, I said, I can't wait to see how God works with this. And he came back in the kitchen and he said, I don't want you to leave. And I said, well, you know what that means. He says, yeah, I heard you. I said, okay. A week or so later, we're having a conversation. I couldn't tell you what it was about. I have no idea. But we were having this conversation, and he all of a sudden says, well, if we're going to do this, then we need to an hour and da, da. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, and he says, what? And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Noah. And I said, do you hear yourself? He said, yeah. And I said, wow. I said, where is this coming from? And he said, I heard you. So we went from a relationship, 10 or more years of, I would say, we, ours, and us. And I feel, this is just my interpretation, but I feel he would always say me, myself, and I. And it was a very huge struggle to constantly try to rein us into a family when he was constantly trying to not be fully committed by always being independent. And so it was tough. It was very, very tough. But I am extremely grateful that we had that last conversation about leaving versus staying, and him deciding that he wanted me to stay, and him seeing the virtue in our relationship, because 2 years after that, we got the bad news. And I'm so glad that we reconciled that before we got the bad news. So that way, going forward, it wasn't like, oh, you got to stay because he's sick, or oh, you gotta, be there for him, even though you guys have been in this rocky relationship all this time. It wasn't like that, because the 2 years that we had before we got the bad news was awesome. Awesome. We went we went to a ski resort. We didn't ski, but we went to a ski resort. We went to beaches up in Maine, and we went to the Cape. We went to Ocean Beach, New London. We went to Lake George. We went up to Niagara Falls. We had a ball. We had a ball, and it was just mainly at that time just he and I, because we would get the grandkids every other weekend, but the weekends we didn't have them, we were off doing stuff, and we had a ball, and we spent so much time together, and we just loved on each other, and it was just wonderful. So Noah used to go to the doctors, and he would come home, and I'd say, "How did it go?" And he'd say, "Oh, it was just a doctor's appointment." And so that would be that. He would never give me a report or anything like that. He would just, it was just a doctor's appointment. And so this one time he went to the doctor's, and he saw the physician assistant, and the physician assistant said, "I looked through your records and I'm very impressed." Oh, because this was his first time seeing her. "I am very impressed. They did this, they did that, they did the other, and they made sure that they had this covered." Back in 2013, Noah had a heart attack. He says it was a small incident, but he had a heart attack, and so they had to watch out for all of that. And he was supposed to stop smoking cigarettes, but he had trouble quitting smoking cigarettes. So what he did was he moved from cigarettes over to the vape, and he was only going to vape for a short period of time. Everyone told him could only be for a short period of time, but he ended up vaping until just about until the end. He quit like when he literally could not maneuver everything anymore. That's when he quit vaping. So anyway, the nurse, the medical assistant said, physician's assistant said, "There's only one thing in these records that I don't see. Do you recall having a PSA?" And he says, "A PSA? No, I don't think so." And she says, "Well, I think I want to have you set up for a PSA, and but don't worry about it. It might not mean anything. I just want to get your numbers. You're of the age that you should be getting tested for it." So he came home, and I said, "How was the doctor's appointment?" Like I always do. And he says, "Well," and this time he shared everything that she said until he got to the PSA. And he said, "I have no idea what that is, but I know that you'll find out what it is because you love to Google everything." Sure enough, I Googled the heck out of it. And I did see where there was a chance of it, of it coming back cancer, um, the reading coming back to where it has cancer in it. And I said, but I didn't say anything to him about it. Honestly, I saw it, but I just dismissed it. I was like, "Oh, that's not going to happen." So the physician assistant called and said the results came back in, and she wanted to see him. So he went in, and she said, "Unfortunately, the numbers are high." So they wanted to send him to get tested by a urologist. And they scheduled the appointment and everything. So from this point forward, I was at every doctor's appointment except for two. And the two I didn't go to, he put on speakerphone so that I could hear what was being said. But so we went to the urologist. When she told him, she set up the appointment and whatnot, he said, "You're coming to that appointment with me." And it was just, when things are happening and you realize things are happening, but in your head you're just like, "Nah, that can't be happening." There was an urgency to him that he never showed before, and there was a dependence that caught me off guard because he's a very independent person. And, like I said, he'd come back and, oh, it was this, it was that, or whatever. And it was no big deal. But this caught both of us off guard, and it was a big deal to him. So I was like, okay. So I went to the urologist appointment with him, and um, the doctor came into the room and he said, do you know why you're here? And I said, you're about to tell me why I'm here. And he said, okay. And then he looked at Noah and he had the rest of the conversation with Noah. And he explained to him that his prostate was enlarged, his numbers were high, and some testing that they had done detected that he had cancer, and that there was treatment for it. And he suggested that he go to his prostate cancer doctor, who was a mentor to him. And he wholeheartedly believed in him. He's a brilliant man, and he knows the latest techniques and this, that, and the other. So in the meantime, Noah's sitting on my left hand side, so I just turn my head like this, and the tears are just flowing. And so the doctor says, I see that you weren't expecting this. And I said, no, but we're going to be okay. So Noah grabbed my hand, and I just, grabbed his hand back, but I didn't want him to see me crying. And so we left out of the doctor's office and we were headed out, and he stopped me and he hugged me and he says, I know this isn't what you signed up for. And I just looked at him and I said, this is exactly what I signed up for. This is why I'm here. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. It's a us thing. It's not a you thing. It's an us thing. And he was like, okay. So we went to see the cancer doctor, and they put him on some hormones, and the hormones were supposed to hopefully shrink the tumor so that they could go through his abdomen robotically and minimize all of the damage that could be done if they went through the normal way. And so he was on these hormones for a long time, and it's kind of incredible because they had did some testing, and it showed his prostate, and it showed the cancer was sort of kind of like in here. And then they did some more testing, and it showed the prostate, and it showed that the tumor was like more like over here. And then they did some more testing, and it showed the prostate, and excuse me, and it seemed to me like the cancer was like right here on the lining. So I said to the doctor, is it shrinking it or is it moving? And I said exactly that scenario to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh no, well, we're not concerned. We're not concerned. And I said, look, I'm not a urologist. I'm not a prostate cancer doctor. I don't know all of this stuff. But I know that 1 + 1 = 2. And if you have the prostate here and the tumor is here and then it's here and then it's here, it's moving. He said, well, the medicine is working and it's shrinking it, and it's so we're not too concerned about that. We'll be operating. So they decided the date that they were going to operate and whatnot. So now I'm concerned. They tell us all of the benefits and all of the complications and all of the, and now I'm concerned because I'm like, oh my God, this is serious. So he goes to have the surgery, and they remove it, but unfortunately, because the cancer, like I said, had moved and had gotten outside of the lining of the prostate, it had metastasized to other areas of his body. And so the surgery wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be, and the complications were a little bit worse than they thought that it was going to be. So they decided to put him on some medication to keep the PSA down. And that meant he ended up having to get these shots and take these pills and whatnot. And that really seemed to be working good. And so for 2 years, well, yeah, two, no, yeah. So for about 2 years, he seemed to be doing well. Well, he was doing well. They were very pleased with everything and whatnot. So at the end of 2022, well, near somewhere in 2022, I was really excited and happy, and I wanted to show Noah how much he's loved because Noah's unassuming. Noah doesn't, he's not up in your face. He's not, you know, look at me, see me. And it's really kind of strange that he's not that way because he's a well-known athlete. He played football. He played baseball. He played. He was a runner. He raced. He's like one of the fastest runners in Springfield at one point, and so he was athletically inclined, and he was very good at what he did athletically. I didn't know him through all of that. I met him later in life, but he was very good at what he did athletically, but he was never a hog for attention. And, so I just felt like he, I wanted to show him how loved he was. Not that I anticipated that he was dying, not that I thought that he wasn't going to be with us too much longer, nothing like that. It was just I wanted to show him that I loved him. Okay. And so uh, I decided to throw him. Well, actually, a girlfriend of mine was like, throw him a party. And I was like, no, there's nothing big coming up. There's nothing, to celebrate or whatever. I mean, he's going to be 63. That's not a big birthday to celebrate. That's not a, milestone or whatever. And so I'm thinking. And I thought about it and I said, oh, we're gonna be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. So that's what we're going to do. So he was a champ. Listen, Noah was a champ. He went out with me and he took some professional pictures. When we got engaged, we had taken these set of pictures, and one of them was a pose that I absolutely love. And when we went out to take the pictures for the anniversary party for the save the date, we did a duplicate of that setting. So it's like 25 years later. And we did the pictures in our wedding attire, which we both lost weight so that we could fit into our wedding attire. And it was just wonderful. And he just did everything I asked him to do. He didn't give me any arguments. And he would always say, I'm being a good boy. I'm being a good boy. And I was like, yeah, you're being a good boy. You're being a good boy. So we took these beautiful pictures and we sent out to save the dates. And then I made all these arrangements, and we were having the party on a boat in the Connecticut River. And it was a scenic boat. And it was just, all of these different plans. We had to go down on the boat and see it and plan how we wanted everything set up and whatnot. And he was just like all for it. So then I had wanted to do a special dance, so he went to dance lessons with me. It was just he just, oh my God, he just did everything I asked him to do, and he did it with a smile, and he acted like everything was okay. And but at this time, you could kind of notice that his energy level was coming down, and that his response time was a little bit more delayed. And he was starting to you know say he was a little tired. And Noah was never tired. Noah would take a 5-minute nap and he'd be ready to go for 8 more hours. He was just never tired, and he was full of energy and whatnot. So near the beginning of 2023, he started having this cough. It was more like the end of 2022. And what happened was we had gotten our COVID shots, and I got the COVID and the flu shot. He never got the flu shot. He didn't like that. So he got this cough. And it just sounded, we just figured, oh, it was from the shot, or, he got a little cold or whatever. That's what it sounded like initially. So by about January, I was like, still coughing? And he was like, yeah, I know, huh? But now it's like a dry cough. So in about February, he's coughing, but he's coughing so hard that I'm like, "Are you trying to cough up a lung? What is going on? What is happening?" And he's like, "I don't know. I don't know what is going on." So we had a doctor's appointment, a follow-up one for with his prostate cancer doctor. And she's like, "Oh, the numbers are so good. We're so happy. Everything is going well. We're looking at longevity." And I'm like, "Yeah, but he's got this cough." And she's like, "Yeah, but the numbers are good. We're really happy about the numbers." And I said, "Yeah, but he's got this cough." And then she said, "Yeah, well, the numbers are," and she's showing me the numbers, and she said, "This is where we want them to be, so the numbers are good. We're not concerned with the cough. We're concerned about the PSA numbers and this." And I said, "Listen, his cancer metastasized, and so he had started complaining of a backache because Dr. Marsha, suggested, "Oh, you probably were coughing so hard that you might have pulled a muscle in your back or something. That's probably what that is." So he's taking Tylenol several times a day, and he's starting to be in pain. And so I said to her, I said, "Listen, the cancer is metastasized, and there's something up here in his like shoulder blade area or whatever. Can you look at the pictures and see if maybe that's causing him to cough? Maybe that's causing him his back pain. Something's going on." So she says to me, "Okay, I'll send him for an MRI." They sent him for an MRI, and they found that he had, when they initially did the body scan for the prostate cancer, they found a little spot on his lung, and they weren't concerned about it, but they said they would keep an eye out on it. Well, they're liars. They did not keep an eye out on it, and now he had two tumors in his lung, one of them pressing against his spine. So he had to go and get a biopsy. He went and got the biopsy. Well, we went and he got the biopsy, and so one day at this time, he he says to me, we used to always walk around the neighborhood all the time. And now he's been kind of tired. He was part of the Live Strong program at the YMCA, and he loved doing that. He was so engaged with that, but he had started getting tired, and there were a couple of times when he had missed that. And I'm like, wow, these are things that he loved, and now he's kind of tired from it. And I tried to say, "Oh, well, maybe it's the medication. Maybe the medication has him tired or whatever, making excuses for it or whatever." So we walked, he says, "Come on, let's walk up to CVS." And I said, "Okay." So we walk up to CVS, and I'm all excited because he's walking, and we get to CVS, and he gets his medicine, and we're walking back, and I'm taking, we're walking, and we're laughing, and we're talking, and we're joking, and out of the clear blue sky, he says, "Yep, I'm going to take all of these pills, and then it'll be done." And I went to take a step, and I just stopped, and I turned to him, and I said, "They called you. What did they say?" He said, "I can't get nothing past you." And I says, "No, you can't. What did they say?" And he said, "We'll talk about it when we get to the house." The tumors were malignant, and they needed to take a course of action very quickly because they were growing. They're not exactly sure what was making them grow as fast as they were growing, but we needed to get a hold of it as quickly as we possibly could. So in the meantime, we're coming up on the party. So we have people, they come from out of town. His family was there. Some of my family members came. Our grandkids were there. It was just a beautiful, beautiful time. We walk up on the boat, and we do our dance, and oh man, it was just awesome. Awesome. Our youngest granddaughter and our oldest grandson paid tribute to us, and it was just really, really beautiful. The food was wonderful. The guests were great. The DJ was out of this world. We just had a really, really, really good time. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Okay, so on that day, people were calling and texting, "Are you going to still have it? Is this still going to go on? Are you going to still have the party?" Because it was pouring down rain. And I said, no. And I said to everybody, no, and I will be there. We're going to be there. Well, we get down to the pier, and I kid you not, the rain stopped and the clouds dissipated and the sun came out. It was gorgeous. The entire time we were out on the water, strolling up the Connecticut River this way and coming back down this way and whatnot, it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. And we had a wonderful time, beautiful time. And at one point, somebody wanted us to go up on the deck to take pictures of us, and we turned to walk towards the deck, and I don't know what it was, but it was the slightest noise, and he just said, I don't know if it was a grunt, a moan, or what it was, but I just turned and looked at him real fast, and he said, I'm good, I'm good. And I said, okay, okay. And we went up and took pictures and whatnot. Well, when the boat docked and we all went and got in our cars and started pulling out of the pier, the rain returned, and it was raining cats and dogs. Oh my goodness. So it was just amazing how we were blessed with such a beautiful day for such a beautiful time. And so from that point forward, things started changing. Our youngest granddaughter had her 16th birthday party, and Noah is the kind of grandfather that, I mean, he loved those kids and would do anything he possibly could for those kids. And he wanted to leave the party early. It broke my heart because that's not who he was. So then he went to work one day. Well, he was on his way to work one day, and all of a sudden I looked up and he was coming through the door, and he was like, I can't do it today. If you know Noah, you know Noah loved his work and he loved his church, and he would do anything for either place. And he couldn't go to work that day. And then a week or so later, he would be the first one at the church to open up everything, turn everything on, the heat on in the wintertime, the air on in the summertime. And, he did all of that. And he took pride in everything he did. He was meticulous in everything that he did. And he took a lot of pride in it. And one day he left for church. And before I could get my clothes on and my shoes on and get out the door, he was coming back in the door. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And he said, I can't do it today. He says, I got there and I just couldn't do it. He said, I had to come home. And that is when I knew the granddaughter's birthday party, coming from work, and then not being able to stay at church. I knew that things were changing. And so we went to the doctors and explained everything that was going on, but they had given us one of the doctors out in Connecticut, and I asked Noah if we could look into having a doctor here closer to us. And so we found someone and we loved him, and so what he came up with was the idea to find to get Noah in this program where they would create these markers which would somehow, don't get me to lying, I don't know, but they were supposed to do something that was going to help with shrinking and keeping the tumors down, not so that it didn't spread and so whatever. And so Noah was part of that program, and then this doctor said that he wanted him to take a couple of rounds of chemo, and then they would look into radiation. But because of the way that it was metastasized in his body, it wasn't like it was all in a general area. It was in different spots of his body, and so radiation was going to be iffy. So he took round one of the chemo, and it was horrible, and he almost died from it. And it got so bad that he was in the bed for 3 days. He wasn't moving, he wasn't getting up, he wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking, he wasn't doing anything. He was just laying there. And I said to him, you got to go to the emergency room. We got to take you to the emergency room." And he was like, "Nope, he wasn't going to the emergency room." So I bathed him and I got him dressed, and I called his brother and told his brother he was going to have to come and help me. And he came, and we got him out of the house. He was so mad at me. He kept saying, "Just let me sleep. Just let me sleep. I'm just tired. Just let me sleep." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I hear you, but you got to go to the hospital." Well, I got to the hospital. So the brother says, "Who do you want to ride with, her or me?" And he says, "I'm riding with you. I'm not speaking to her." So we get to the hospital, and I got there before them. So I'm in the lobby giving them Noah's information, and he comes through the door in the wheelchair. And I hand him the mask, and I said, "You got to put the mask on because he's immunocompromised because of the cancer." And I said, "You got to put your mask on." He's like, Hun, I can't breathe." I said, "I know, but you got to put your mask on because if you don't put your mask on, you're going to get sick." He says, "Hun, seriously, I can't." And he breaks out in this sweat. I mean, literally the sweat was just pouring down his body. And he's just like, "Oh my God." So the woman behind the desk presses a button and it sends off an alarm, and this other woman comes and runs around and gets him, and they rush him over to this room that has 7 or 8 doctors in there waiting for him. And it worked so beautifully. It was just unfreaking believable how quickly they worked at getting him in there and getting him better. And what happened was his heart rate was so elevated. I want to say it was like, I don't know. I don't even want to lie because I don't even. It was high. It was extremely high. So they had to give him some medicine to slow it down. And they said that if he hadn't come to the hospital when he did, he wasn't going to be here much longer because his heart wasn't going to be able to take all of that abuse. So he was in the hospital a couple of days and he came out. And then he went for the second round of chemo, and it was it was horrible. It was just, oh my God. It was, so he said to me at that time, he says, "Hun, I can't do this. It's killing me. I can't do this." And I said, "I don't know about you, but I can't do this anymore either." So, okay, I get it. I get it. So that at that point in time, the doctor, they hadn't come up with the markers yet, and the doctor said, Noah had to consider what he felt his quality of life was going to be. He said, so I asked him what the time frame was that we were looking at, and he said a year. And I said, "Okay." So I asked him what did he consider quality of life, and he said that he's had patients that could go and play 9 holes of golf every so often. Okay. So from there, we knew he was going to be going on palliative care, which means that they'll give him his meds and keep him comfortable, but we couldn't do anything really until the markers came in. Well, the markers came in, and we were ecstatic, and he started taking the medication, and I kid you not, the tumors were shrinking. He was getting his appetite back. Everything was um seemed to be going really well. Everything seemed to be going really well. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And so we had to get the Visiting Nurses Association involved. And on the day that they were coming to visit to analyze him, or yeah, whatever, I had set up a tray by the bed. In the tray, I had put his toothbrush, toothpaste, and 2 glasses, 2 small glasses. One had water in it, and the other one was empty, so that when he swished his mouth, he could spit it out into that glass. He liked to use glass, so that's what I did. And I had left the bedroom and went into the kitchen, and as I was doing something in the kitchen, I heard this ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And I was like, "What the heck was that? What could that have been?" And I said, "It sounded like a tree fell on the house." I'm like, "Tree didn't fall on the." Boom! I said, Oh my God. I ran into the bedroom, and sure enough, he was laid out on the floor in shattered glass. So I said, "What the heck did you do?" He said, "Oh, I was gonna go to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and as I was walking towards the door, I realized I didn't have my toothbrush, so I pivoted to go to grab the toothbrush, but my body pivoted, but my legs didn't." And he crashed into the bed tower and hit the floor. And so I just told myself, be still, be still. Just be still for one moment so I could figure it all out. And I know, don't come at me, because I know the ambulance told me, the doctors told me, the visiting nurse guy told me, everybody told me I should not have moved him. But all I saw was he was laying in shattered glass, and I was scared to death that he was going to get cut and it was going to be a serious cut. So I picked him up and put him on the bed. He tells people I scooped him up and tossed him on the bed, but I didn't. So he's laying on the bed and he's saying, "Look at here, look at here." And he's doing his arm like this. And he says, "I think it's broke. I think it's broke." And to him, it was a joke. And you got to understand, he's on like all these medications and a lot of painkillers. And so at that point in time, he didn't realize the pain that he was going to end up feeling. And so he's twisting his arm like this, and you could see the bone jiggling in his arm. So we get him to the emergency room, and they keep him for 2 days in the emergency room, but by the nurses' stations, like right around in the hallway, outside in the hallway. And I keep asking, what is going on? Why aren't they? Because I'm thinking it's a broke arm, they're going to set it. So they decided, no, they were going to put a pole in there and to keep it stable. And I'm like, so they were gonna try to send him home, and I was like, you can't send him home. He's got a broken arm. And they said, oh yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's got medications and he's got painkillers. He'll be fine. I said, you can't do that. You can't send him home. He's got stage 4 prostate cancer metastasized, stage 4 lung cancer metastasized, and a broken arm. How are you going to send him home? So this doctor came in, God bless her heart, and she decided to put him in one of the outer side rooms, but then she transferred him upstairs. And so what they did was they put him on the first operating time slot for 4 days in a row, and each day they kept pushing it aside, pushing it aside, pushing it aside. So on the fourth day, the doctor called me and said, "This is a whole totally different doctor, not the nice one." Called me and told me that he had consulted with this doctor, that doctor, and the other doctor, and they decided that it was going to be best to send Noah home until the surgery, and they decided the surgery was going to be the day before Thanksgiving. And I said, and this is like 2 weeks away. And I said, "No, you can't send him home. He's in pain and he's got you." And they said, "Well, they don't feel that there's anything that can be done for him until the day of the surgery, so they were going to send him home." And I said, "No, you can't send him home." And I repeated, the condition, his condition and stuff. And they said, "Well, we sat down, we've had a conversation, and this is what we've decided." And he said to me, "Do you understand?" So I hesitated for a moment, and he said, "Do you understand?" And I said, "I understand that you're going to do what you feel you need to do, but I need you to understand that I'm going to do what I feel I need to do." He said, "You do what you need to do." I said, "Okay." And as soon as we hung up the phone, I called everybody I could think of. I texted everybody I could think of. And I said, call, text, fax, email Mark Kerouac at he's the CEO at Bay State Hospital, and tell them not to release Noah. By 8:30 the next morning, 8 o'clock is the next morning, the admin assistant called me and said, "Can you please stop them? Can you please stop?" She said, they're inundating us with phone calls and emails. And she said, "Please stop them." And I said, "Will do." She said, "He's not going anywhere. He will be in here until he has the surgery." And I said, "Thank you very much." And I told her, I said, "I'm sure that they did not mean for it to sound like this, but all I heard was, 'He's on the curb, come get him.'" And I just couldn't abide by that. That was not happening. So he was in the hospital for the 2 weeks. He was supposed to get have surgery the day before Thanksgiving. They brought him down there. We gave our kisses and hugs, and you'll be okay. I'm praying for you, and this and that and the other and whatnot. And he, I before I could even leave the room, they had brought him back. The surgeon tested positive for COVID, so he couldn't do the surgery that day. So we enjoyed our Thanksgiving dinner down there at the hospital, and it was pretty good. I loved it, and Noah ate a little bit of it too. But then the next day, the day after Thanksgiving, when they had rescheduled the surgery for, he was very anxious, and he was talking like, if something should happen, if I don't make it, if I, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna be fine. Don't even worry about it. You're gonna be fine. It's not a big deal. They're just gonna stick the rod in there. He's like, I don't know. I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this. I said, you were fine the other day. What happened? What's going? He's like, I don't know. I just don't feel good about this. So they took him down for surgery, and they're in there for a couple of hours. I had left to come home because he was only supposed to be in the hospital a couple more days, and then he was going to come home. And so I wanted to get things situated at the house. And he um he was in surgery, and I get a phone call, and it's the doctor who performed the surgery. He's all upset, telling me that they're trying to revive Noah right now. His heart had stopped. They were able to revive him the first time, and it stopped again, and they're trying right now to revive him. I needed to get to the hospital as soon as I could. And he said, what do you want us to do? And I said, I want you to do everything in your power. Whatever you need to do, I need you to do it. So I called his family, and we all rushed to the hospital, and he pulled through. And they put him in ICU. He was in ICU a couple of days, and then he got stronger, and they switched him to another room, and he got stronger, and they switched him to another room. But their recommendation was for him to go to physical therapy, so that way they could help build up his muscles and whatnot, so that he could be more independent at home. And Noah liked that idea, so he ended up going to this place in Westfield, and he was upset and anxious when he first got there, but after a couple of days and whatnot, he was like fine. He had a roommate that was awesome, and and he was fine after a couple of days, and he was in good spirits. He was doing his physical therapy. I would go visit him every day. He had family members, friends, everybody coming to visit him and whatnot, and he seemed to be thriving. He was eating, he was drinking, he was going to the bathroom. He seemed to be thriving. And then around Christmas time, he started to slow down. He stopped eating, and he started talking. He was confused and started talking gibberish. And there was a football game on, and he says, "Hun." Well, I won't go into all of that, but anyway. So the day or two after Christmas, no, maybe it was closer to it was somewhere between New Year's and Christmas. They asked me if okay. So he had a catheter on, but it wasn't the kind that you insert. It was the kind that you tape around the area. And the catheter had come undone in the middle of the night. And he was trying to get in touch with the nurses so that they could clean him up and fix the problem. And so he said for 6 hours. They started out saying it was only 2 hours because every 2 hours they were supposed to be checking on the patient. However, what it ended up being was at least 5 hours. By the time it was all said and done, he was laying in his urine for at least 5 hours. And so I had to, go and ream them a new one. And then from then I had to call. I called every night, in the middle of the night, I had my alarm set for 2 o'clock and for 4 o'clock. And every night I would call and say, has anybody checked on Noah? Yes, he's doing fine. We just checked on him. Or, we're going to be checking on him. I'm like, okay, I'll be calling back in a couple hours, to make sure that they would go and check on him. And it was horrible that it had gotten to this. So, anyway, he started becoming confused with things, and they wanted he got a temperature, and they wanted to send him to the emergency room. So just in case, they were scared that he was getting pneumonia again. And so they sent him to the emergency room. And New Year's Eve, he was in the emergency room. And I said to him, I'll be back. I'm going to go take a nap for a couple of hours, and then I'll come back, and we'll wish each other a happy new year. Okay? And he was like, "You got to go." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'll be back. I'm going to just go take a nap and I'll be back." And he was like, I don't know, he was anxious. And I was like, "I'll be back. I'll be back." So just before midnight, I came back, and the security was walking me to his room, and then one of the nurses came up and was walking with me, and I could hear him talking. And I said, "Oh, does he have a visitor?" And she said, "No." So I walked in there, and he was having a full-fledged conversation with someone. And I was like, okay. So then they were testing him, and the doctor called me to tell me that the something was raised, and it was affecting him. So we had to, make some decisions. So they moved him from the emergency room into a room, and then they came and they talked to me again. And initially, he was going in and out, so someone would come and visit him, and he would recognize them, and they would have a good visit. And then someone else would come, and he would just like stare at him, like, he didn't really know what was going on. Um, and then they moved him to another room, and the doctor came in and talked to me and just discussed with me what the next steps were. And I said, "Well, he says he wants to come home." And they said, "Well, we have all the resources here." And I said, "He said he wants to come home." And they said, "Well, he'll have 24-hour care here." And I said, "He said he wants to come home." She said, "Okay, we'll do what we can." And he had been laying there. We thought he was asleep. He had been laying there not saying anything. And all of a sudden he jumped up and he said, "You'll do what?" And she said, "We'll do what you want us to do." He said, "I want to go home with her, and then I can go home." I looked at him and I said, "You know what that means?" He says, "Yes, I know what that means." I said, "Okay, you'll be coming home." So she says, "We'll get the paperwork. We'll get the paperwork in, and we'll start working on it." And when she left, he said, "I want to call my sisters." And we called his sisters, and he told them that he was done. He couldn't fight anymore. And so I told him, I said, he says, I give up. I can't fight anymore. I've lost. I said, "You didn't lose. You fought hard. You fought valiantly." I said, "I'm so incredibly proud of you. You put all your time and effort into it, trying to be around for us." I said, and I am so pleased. I am so happy with you." And so they said, how much they loved him and respected him, and they said all, and and that was when the decision, he had made the decision. So they said it usually takes 4 days to get everything in motion, but in 2 days he was coming home. And so they called me the morning that he was coming home, and they said, "Yeah, he tested positive for COVID." And I said, "Oh my God." I said, "Does that affect anything?" And they said, "No, he's still coming home." And I said, "Okay, fine." Well, I went and took one of those home tests, and what do you mean I had COVID too? So he came home, and the hospice had been here and they had set up his bed and everything, and so they had left some medication, and so I had everything I pretty much needed. But once he got here, about an hour after he was here, a hospice nurse came and she told me how to distribute everything and whatnot. And so I put on a couple of football games that he missed, and he just seemed like he was just laying there resting. And every so often, when I had to give him his medicine, I did. And then after the couple of football games, I started playing romantic music. So I'm playing all these love songs and whatnot and stuff. And so the song that we danced off of at the party was one of the songs was "I Believe in You and Me" by Whitney Houston. So I put the song on, and I'm sitting there sitting there next to the bed holding his hand. And when the song came on, he put ever so slightly pressure on my hand, not squeezing it so much, but just like a shift in it that let me know, he wanted something. So I look up at him, and he's looking at me. And his eyes are all clouded over and everything, but he's looking dead at me. And I'm like, okay, okay, okay. I know I'm playing all this sappy music. This is the last song. As soon as this song is done, I'll start playing your type of music. And so I'm, looking down, and he puts the pressure on my hand again. And I look up, and he's staring at me in my eyes. So I stare back at him, and she's singing the song, and she's getting higher and higher. And we're looking at each other, and he starts to have trouble breathing. And I said, "Noah, are you okay?" And he's like, starts gasping and trying to, and I like, "Noah, are you okay? Are you okay?" And so I called the hospice and I said, "Something's wrong. Something's wrong." I gave him his medication and he's gasping for air and stuff. And so he says, "Oh, well, give him this or whatever." And so I give him some of that, and he's still gasping, like he's gasping for air to breathe. And I'm like, "What is wrong? Are you okay? Are you?" And he starts crying, and I lose it. And I'm like, "Oh my God, he's crying, he's crying." And the guy says, "Marsha, calm down. He's crying because he knows what's happening, and there's nothing he can do about it. And he's upset because you're so upset. So you have to calm down so that he'll calm down." I said, "Okay, Noah. Okay, okay, fine. I'm calm. I'm calm." And I'm staring at him in his eyes, and he's staring at me in my eyes, and the tempo is coming down. The song is coming towards the end, and he's just staring at me, and he's breathing. He's struggling. And I'm staring at him, and he's staring at me, and he's holding focus with my eyes. And he says, I said, "Noah!" And he said, and that was it. He stared at me through the whole Whitney Houston song, and that was it. And I feel like that was the most beautiful, the best way ever for us to spend our time together in the end, because he, to me, showed me how much he loved me by making that last effort to be the last thing that he saw, to be the last thing that he held. He held my hand, to be in my presence when it was all said and done. And I am just so incredibly, incredibly, incredibly grateful to have experienced that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event. So I thought that because I felt like it was so wonderful, that I should be okay. And I thought that I would be okay. And of course, after someone dies, you have to go through the, um, putting the service together, and putting, getting everything all in line and whatnot and stuff. He had a beautiful, beautiful service. And he had a 2-day affair. He had a wake on a Thursday night and a funeral on a Friday morning. And Wonderful turnout, beautiful, beautiful turnout. But at the wake, we had a session where people could come up and speak on how they knew him and what he meant to them and everything everybody said was so incredibly beautiful. And so at the end, when no one else was getting up, I got up calling myself to thank everybody for everything that they've done to help out with what all was going on, or being a part of Noah's life, and helping me with everything that I needed help with and whatnot. That's what I called myself getting up to do. But what I ended up doing was telling this story. And I just the other day, someone brought it up. I kid you not. People constantly bring it up to me about how beautiful the story was and how poignant it was to them. And at the end of me telling the story, I said, the moral of this story is advocate for your loved one. Advocate, 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 no matter what. No matter who tells you what, a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, or whatever, advocate for them, because number one, they're going through something, so they're already scared and nervous and aren't thinking about what all needs to be done. And number two, you won't believe how much gumption you get when your loved one is in trouble and they need some assistance. You do what you need to do without coming outside of yourself. You do what you need to do in order to make things happen. And that's all I could have done, was advocate for him, because when one of the doctors came in to see him after the calls were made, and they introduced themselves and they said, "You're the wife?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we wanted to meet you and we wanted to meet him. Nobody has ever done what you did before, and we were just so impressed." And I said, "Oh," I said, "he's nobody but my husband, but he is my husband." And the woman said, "You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You did exactly what you were supposed to do." And so that's my main take on dealing with illness and dying, is advocate for your loved one as much as you can, and love them as much as you possibly can. Just love, 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 love. He loved me so much. Noah, I tell you, last 6 to 7 years, he loved me so much, and he showed it in so many different ways. But he couldn't have shown me any more than, number one, making sure that I didn't have to worry about anything after he was gone, and number two, staring into my eyes during the song that I love so much and I made him learn how to dance to. He knew how much that song meant to me, and he stared in my eyes while he was dying. He was thinking of me, and that just is so incredibly beautiful. His funeral service was wonderful. It was beautiful, well attended. We had a repast for him, which was beautiful. It was wonderful. And needless to say, after the funeral service, after the repast, everybody got back with life, and I was left to deal with the loss and the loneliness and the separation by myself. And it was hurtful, it was painful, it was, oh, I mean, there was a time when it just seemed like there wasn't a day that I didn't like cry most of the day. Um, I don't know. If you know me, you know I'm a daycare provider, and if you don't know me now, you know I'm a daycare provider. And the kids helped me get through so much, because they're kids. They don't know anything, and they were so loving and so considerate and so compassionate towards me. And it was just wonderful dealing with them through this, and they loved him. So they asked about. He used to, he would come down and visit with them from time to time when he could, and go for walks with us when he could, and stuff. And they loved him. They loved him, and he loved them. And so they would ask about him and whatnot. So their parents had to, break it to them. But they were babies. They don't really understand what it means and whatnot. So anyway, I started grief counseling through hospice. And I get a phone call once a month, and he and I go through everything that I'm going through and whatnot. And it's been incredibly, incredibly, incredibly helpful. But one day he had called. Okay, so this is what happened. One day after 4 months, my pastor sent me a text message and said, "Hey, sis, just checking on you." I wrote him back a dissertation. I was just like, oh my God, I don't even believe the audacity to reach out to me through a text after I lost someone who was very, very much um, a big part of our church and loved our church and um, did everything he could in his power to make everything work right and run smoothly and oh my God, and adored our pastor. Couldn't no one say anything about our pastor to him because and this man waited 4 months before reaching out to me through a text to say, just checking on you. So I had written this long old text message back. And while I'm typing up the text message, my phone rings and it's my grief counselor. And I said, "Can you believe this?" And I'm going on and on and on. And I'm, oh my God. And so when I finish, he says, "It's always good to write things down so you can see how you feel on paper." He says, "But you don't always have to send it." He said, "This is a good time for you to reflect on how you're feeling. And if you're feeling that way, for you to try to figure out a way how to make it that so that no one else feels this way." He said, "You might want to think about doing something in the church that will help people who are going through this type of grief, or you might want to think about, possibly starting a group so that you can help people through their grief." He said, "There are all kinds of things you can think about doing." He said, "But you don't really have to send that message." So I said, "Okay." So I erased the whole message and restarted it and said, "I need prayer." I said, "I'm suffering and I need prayer." And his response was, "Okay, come to church on Sunday, and in between the service and brunch, we can go off into a room and pray." And I just typed back, "Okay," and said, "I'm done." Where was the empathy, the compassion, the love, the consideration? Where was any of it? It's like all I needed was for somebody to call me. They didn't even have to come over here. All that I wanted was for someone to offer me a word of prayer, was for someone to pray with me through all of this grief, all of this sadness, all of this hurt, all of this pain, just for someone to call me and say, "I know this is a difficult time for you, but can we have a word of prayer?" Don't get me wrong. If this hadn't happened to me and if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have come up with this idea, or this would not have been placed on my heart to start a podcast. Um, a podcast to hopefully help others who feel um, lost, left alone, uh, insignificant, crazy, um, all of the things that people feel when they're going through grief. And people coming to them and saying, "Oh, well, they're in a better place," or, "Oh, they wouldn't want you to be going through this," or, "Are you still going through that?" Or, "Isn't it time that you move on?" I mean, all the different things that people say, the platitudes to that they feel that they're helping you through your grief process, but all they're really doing is trying to move your grief process out the way so that they don't feel uncomfortable. Um, Hopefully, this podcast will help people to know that number one, they are not crazy. They have to go through the grief process, and the grief process sucks. And number two, that they are not alone. That there are others out here that are going through the same thing that they're going through, and that if they need to reach out and touch somebody, reach out and talk to somebody, reach out and or if they need someone to reach out to them, they'll know that they're not alone. They're not alone. Um, I say at the end of each episode, if you like this podcast, please give us a thumbs up. If you think that it resonates with you or that you know someone else that it resonates with, please share it. And by all means, leave me a comment as to what this episode means to you, or what you think that we might can do differently, or um, you know keep up with your encouragement, because that I absolutely, that helps to keep me going. um, all we want to do is help people going through the grieving process to go through the grieving process. There's no shortcut, there's no fast track, there's no easy method. You just have to go through it. And we want to be here with you to help you through it. This will be probably my last solo episode. Starting the next episode, Teresa, who is our grief counselor, who's going to be working with me and having the conversations with others, she's going to introduce herself next week. And so she'll tell you all about herself, what she knows about and how she's experienced death and grieving, and she'll tell you her credentials. And then from then, we'll start the process of having conversations with others. We'll have all types of conversations. We'll have conversations with people who have lost a significant other, or people who have lost a parent, people who have lost a child, a sibling, a relative, a friend, people who have lost their job, people who have lost pets, and whatever else suggestions come through, however we can help someone getting through the grief process. Don't forget, feel free to leave me a comment about what this podcast is doing to help you, or what we might do to help others. And like, subscribe, and leave us a comment, okay? It's been a pleasure. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to moving forward with you through this grieving process. Have a good night.